Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
I yield my as such time as the gentleman from Georgia desires.
Thank you, and I appreciate the gentleman yielding. And I agree, and this is one of the things that I've thought about a while, and as I mentioned, it was a very true, sincere. I think we have a lot of good attorneys on this committee. That's why we were, objecting not to have questions. And I would, if my friend from Texas and I were in a courtroom together, my immediate thought as an old trial lawyer would be objection calls for speculation. You're asking what speculation would be on what we would have said, but I don't have to have speculation on this. I have facts. What did happen during the previous administration when a contempt proceeding was going on? They actually did, the DAG actually made the preemptive assertion, Jim Cole actually made the preemptive assertion for the privilege. My friends across the aisle actually disagreed with this, didn't want it to happen, in fact walked out, made a big production saying it was all political and they should have never held Eric Holder in contempt. The interesting part is, and I go back to this that will actually be repeated and repeated and repeated, is that was over 400 days. We're still under, even at the generous 2 months level here. And I think it's really interesting happening because I want to go back to the, really the interesting issue that Mr. Neguse brought up, which was a valid point. It's something to bring up, but it also strengthened my argument that we're going too quickly, that there were accommodations made. The Department of Justice were in the process of making accommodations, and they made that from the original intent of letting members go. That was never, I've never saw a definitive statement that said that's all we'll ever do. Okay, and I did go see it. That was public record. I did go see it. The chairman has not gone and seen it.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will.
Ranking member, with all the respect in the world, while I appreciate that, it seems to me that it's been pretty clear from the Department of Justice that they will only allow you and the chairman of this committee, as well as a few other members of this Congress, of this House, to see the materials you have. Our point is that the Republican members of the Judiciary Committee, as well as the Democratic members of this committee, as well as the Republican and Democratic members of the Intelligence Committee, ought to be able to review these materials to perform their critical constitutional duties. And that's why the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, joined with the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, in making the same request that this committee has made.
Yeah, reclaiming my time, and I appreciate the gentleman there, and I think this is the exact thing. That was the request actually was made yesterday. Is we'll have this request. There's never been a definitive. We'll never do, because we've actually seen a request, an offer made yesterday that was rejected, and that's why we're here today. That's part of negotiations. As anyone who's went through a negotiation process, that's part of the negotiation. You may not like the timing, you may not like it, but again, in less than 40 days, it's pretty interesting when we had 400 days and over 300 days with Holder and then also with Myers and Bolton. It's, again, I think we're conflating the issues here, and it's really interesting. The 6E information, we don't need to gloss over that. If you're watching and you're seeing this, don't gloss over the fact that we previously in this committee, the majority rejected an amendment that said 6E information is not going to be a part of this, because now we're looking at this information, and it's been said several times, what is the relevant and what are the speculation and where we go from. I go back to a statement that I made just the other day when the chairman and I were talking about another amendment, and it goes back to this, and this is just true. We vote on words on paper, not intent. We vote on words on paper, and what words on paper say matter, and intent is one that it may intend that we don't ask for this. We may intend that we don't want to do it, but that's not what we vote on in this Congress.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll yield to the gentlelady.
I thank the gentleman. We certainly could be in the courtroom. I just want to clarify that Mr. Holder's activities were far more distinctive for the actual acts of the President of the United States. We are dealing with the actual acts of a President of the United States. And what I was saying, if that occurred between 2012 and 2016, you would be, my good friends, rushing toward a particular procedure. Yeah, this has to do with actual acts of the presidency. I yield back to you.
And I reclaim my time, and that is exactly what I believe my friends and as my friends have said, you are rushing toward. But I'll also go back to this amendment to the gentlelady. This amendment is actually based on a case, and as I laid that out very clearly, this case is when you look at it even from the Holder perspective, wouldn't even apply there. This is actually the SB case we go for. Again, I think this all goes into the very assumption that this is why we need, why this is rushed. That's why we've said this all along, and it just goes back to the court, because if taken to court, if my friends take this to contempt to court, if that's what they're intending to do, they're going to look at the record that was laid, and right now that record and cupboard is bare. With that, I yield back to the gentleman from Colorado.
And I
Mr. Chairman.